Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And I'm so happy to introduce you to a friend of mine today. Her name is Janet Nix. And Janet's a lifelong follower and aficionado of the metaphysical and afterlife phenomena. Janet and I met at Banyan Retreat this past November, and I get to see her again this coming spring at Whispers from the Soul. And I know in my heart that you'll love her just as much as I do. So Janet Nix, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Hello, Sandra. Lovely to speak to you again. It's always nice to speak to you.
I'm so glad we became friends this past November. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we got to spend many meals together on the breaks. And I'm grateful that we're friends. So thank you for saying yes to being on this show.
Well, thank you. I feel honored that you've asked me.
And it's interesting because, you and I spoke a few minutes before I hit the record button, and you were mentioning if you had anything interesting to say. And, my thoughts to all of us is I think that, we live in our own skin. We know our own journeys. And I think some of the things we do becomes regular. But to someone who is grieving the loss of a loved one, or someone who's newly interested in the world of metaphysical or the afterlife, I think we can. There's so much in each one of us that we can do to share and make a difference with others. So, Janet, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the world of the afterlife, so to speak.
Well, I think that looking back over the last 40, 50 years, I realise now that I've probably been on a path. That it's always been there in my life. It's always been around me. When I was a child, I probably hadn't noticed it, because I think most people will tell you that they didn't notice or they didn't think anything was different. It was just something that was always there in their lives. But looking back now, I can see that the spiritual side of things has always been a presence, and it's kind of led me up to where I am today. And I now realise that, like most people will tell you, that it's a very slow process coming to learn about all these things, and nothing happens overnight. And I think it takes some people longer than others to reach that point where they feel that where their place is, what they need to be doing. Some people are only very young; they're in their 20s, and they start into mediumship and that sort of thing. But it hasn't been like that for me, although the presence has always been there. But I feel that now I'm only just getting to a point where I'm actually learning something. I'm actually finding a bit of direction as to where they want me to go.
How do you know that the presence has always been there? Because I don't think I can say that.
I think it's an intuition, really. And I lived in my parents had a pub, and it was a very old pub, and it was full of bumps and bangs and ghostly events, and we kind of got used to them. We didn't really question it much because it was something that always happened. And I remember as a child we had cold spots, and some parts of it you could walk through perfectly normally and it would feel absolutely normal, and another time you would go through the same place and it would be freezing cold or have an atmosphere about it. And things used to happen, glasses used to implode and things used to fall off the wall, but we kind of just accepted it. It wasn't anything unusual to us, and to me as a kid it was just what happened, and I didn't think it was anything extraordinary. And then throughout my life, I think, looking back, I've had lots of little bits of messages and things on my phone and all sorts of stuff. And to me, it's just like someone else is there giving me these messages. Or sometimes something will come into my head. It might be a name, or some music or a song, or just a bit of instruction. Something will come into my head, and I try to act upon it. And now I realise, and now I understand that it's learning how to trust what comes into your head, I think. And so now I've learned to trust the messages that I get and try to act upon them, try to act upon the advice. If you can understand me.
I do, yeah, I do. Now, I met you at Banyan just a few months ago. Prior to that, have you visited Banyan or done any training? Did you study as a medium? Are you a medium?
No, it was my first time at Banyan.
Okay.
Prior to that, I have been on a lot of spiritual workshops and shamanic workshops. I've regularly visited some of the local spiritualist churches that we have around here, because we are home to some of the oldest spiritualist churches in the country, and quite a lot of them are still going strong. And we're lucky to have the likes of people like Mavis Pitilla, and we used to have Diane Elliott when she was still with us. And so I've seen some of the great people locally. And throughout my life, I've always gone to spiritualist churches, and I've always gone to different kinds of workshops and taken notice, really. So I think, like I said, it's kind of led me on a path, and I've followed the path. And the latest turning in the path has been arriving at Banyan.
Yeah, for people that don't know what Banyan is, this could be someone's very first episode. Would you just describe it a little bit?
Well, Banyan is a beautiful retreat in Ashford in Kent, where they hold workshops with some of the greatest mediums, mental and physical mediums that we have in the country at the moment. They hold regular workshops there, and also you can experience a really genuine true seance situation, and that was something that I'd never experienced before. I think that circles are either very private in people's homes these days, or in the spiritualist churches they don't tend to have proper seances. So for me to experience a real seance at Banyan, the Banyan Retreat, was absolutely amazing. It's somewhere that anyone can go to if you want to learn more about the spiritual side of things, or healing, or any of the workshops that they have on offer there.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to now be friends with Nick and Stephen and Eileen Davies and Ann Harrison and Scott Milligan. The world of physical mediumship is something, as of 2 years ago, I didn't even know was possible. And if this is your first episode, it is, I think, mind-blowing, because our loved ones, it's in a dark setting, so that raises a lot of thought on there's a lot of controversial thought, why is it happening in the dark? But it's such things as loved ones coming through, their voices speaking, and phenomena happening, whether, you and I saw, I think you might have seen the little child's hands that formed.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, that absolutely blew me away, to see the real moving hands and the real moving fingers. It wasn't just a picture, it was a lifelike pair of hands. And that alone was just an amazing experience. Yeah.
Giving me goosebumps right now as we talk about it, because and for, again, if this is your first show, you're thinking, what are they talking about? There's a substance called ectoplasm that emanates from one of these physical mediums, in this case, Scott Milligan. And it is said our loved ones in the spirit world can actually step into it or manipulate it, and so people can become real again. And in days gone by, a lot was done in red light, so people could witness their loved ones coming through, or their children, or even pets. And in current day, it's very rare to actually be part of one of these seances, and I think it's especially rare to to have something happen in a red light. But I think what Janet and I witnessed was there was no child in the room physically of human substance, and we both saw these little child's hands holding a glow-in-the-dark tablet walking around the room, and it was just spectacular, as well as many other things. And
I mean, I knew about ectoplasm, but I hadn't realized how easily or how well it could form into a human shape and actually manifest into a person. And I've learned all that from some of the workshops that I've been to in the Banyan Retreat.
And for me, it is even though we talk on the show, Janet, about, because you listen, so many different afterlife topics, for me personally, it's the one I'm digging more into, because if this was in its heyday years ago and so much was done in red light, I can't help but think there are people around the world sitting in circles, maybe not advertising it or talking about it, but that phenomena is happening.
Yes, and I think that we are just, we talk about the old pioneers of the early 1900s, but I think that now, we're the new pioneers, because the ones that went before us, it kind of took a dip from the 1950s onwards, and we had the 70s and 80s and 90s, and whether people were doing that sort of thing privately, I don't know, but now I think it's starting to take off again, and people are starting to take notice about it, and I think it's important that people like us keep it going, because otherwise it could die out altogether. And the old pioneers, they did some magnificent stuff, but probably they were a little bit careless in the way they conducted it, because the stories about them letting anybody come into the seances and creating havoc, and then they were people tried to discredit them in all sorts of ways, and I think if they'd have done it in a kind of more in a stricter manner, it may have not have been discredited quite as often, like Helen Duncan, for example. And today we've got it more regulated, we're more careful, the security is a bit stricter when people are going into seances, and so we've got it covered a little bit better, and I think that's a great thing, because the more people that can start to have circles, the more we're going to get to some kind of result and proof of something, and document it for everyone to know about. So we're the pioneers of the future.
Definitely. And it's fun.
Absolutely, yeah.
When I first went to Banyan, it was a year prior to when I met you. But I was scared. I thought, I don't know what I'm doing here. Why am I going? Seance in the dark sounds frightening.
But it's fun. It's singing and laughter, and it's all, and like everyone will say, there's such a great feeling of love and friendship there. There's no feeling of hostility or badness, or I think that's just an image that's been created in the past by people who know nothing about it. Mm-hmm. But it's such a wonderful atmosphere, and I think that's the atmosphere that spirit want.
Yes, they say laughter is the best energy. I think something like that produces the best energy, and there is a lot of laughter. And when you say love, when I left Banyan, when I was with you, I told Nick and Stephen, who run Banyan, that I've never felt so much love as I felt. I was actually on that day. I mean, it's a feeling of love for the participants who was there, the instructors, and then also the love from the spirit world. I have never felt like that much love around me. What a special place.
Yes, yeah, and it would be lovely to recreate that in other places for people to do that, because we can't all go there. There can't be hundreds of people there. They can only fit so many people into Banyan at any time. So, hopefully it will grow and people will start to have their own circles and experience that all over the world.
Yes. Would you care to share some of your stories of why you believe in the afterlife? Is that a fair question?
Well, yeah, I think that like many people, even if you don't sort of think much about it for most of your life, the one time when it does become very strong in your mind is when you lose somebody close to you, because immediately you start to ask yourself, where have they gone? You can't believe that they've just been wiped off the face of the earth and never to be seen again. And I remember, it's funny, I was only thinking about it this week. Both my parents died very close together, actually, but my mother died 39 years ago, and it doesn't seem that long. But I remember having a conversation with her not that long before she died. And we just said, oh, well, if I go first, or if you go, whichever one of us dies first, we have to make a promise that if there's any way at all I can come back and speak to you or send you a message, we're going to promise now, it definitely will. And, my mum said, well, right, if I go first, I definitely, if there's any way at all I can send you a message to say I'm okay, whatever it takes, I will do it. And I said, well, I'll do the same. And of course, it wasn't long after that my mother died. She had breast cancer, and she died of it very quickly. And obviously all the little things have happened over the years that I thought, well, that could be my mum, or but nothing sort of drastic has happened. She hasn't appeared or anything like that. I've had little nudges and kind of things appear on my phone, but nothing terribly obvious. I thought, oh, that's probably my mum, But I realise now that it's taken 39 years, and maybe I know it's not easy for them to contact us. We know that what we have to do in seance, how we have to put everything in place properly to make it able for them to come through, and it's not an easy thing from their side. So if it was that easy, everyone would be phoning up, but they're not. So it's taken 39 years for the internet to be created, and me to get the knowledge to look onto that and find out where things are, and other people who are doing the same thing. And all these things have to unfold before you get to the point where you may well get that message that was promised all those years ago, and it just goes to show how long it does actually take, and how patient you've got to be, when you want these things to happen. And, we know stories of people who've sat for 8 years in a circle with nothing happening, and then it starts to happen when the situation is right for them. So, I've been on that journey, and looking back, I can see all the twists and turns where I've gone to this workshop, or I've met a certain person, or I've read a book, or and it's taking me somewhere on that path. So I realise now I've got to go with it. Whatever shows up, I'm going to go with it. And at the moment, I'm at the Banyan.
It is going with it, and I think it's trusting.
Absolutely, yeah. It is learning to trust, because there's always that element of doubt in your head that you're thinking, well, is it that? Or, so you've got to sort of just relax and let it go and trust, and then see what happens.
And do you believe it's a lifelong journey? It's like if someone's listening to this episode right now and they're 75 years old and they say, oh, it's too late for me. Do you think it's too late, or can it be any time that we're on our spiritual journey?
Late at all. I don't think it is. I don't really even think there's a lifetime journey. I think it's an always journey, and this is a very short time that we're here, and unfortunately for us, our bodies get old, and we can't really stop that. We can stay in good health, and we can hope for the best, that we'll keep all our faculties and all that, but you're still the same person inside. You're still the person you were when you were 25 inside, and I don't think anything ever changes there. You're still you, and I think when your physical body dies away, you're still going to be you. So I think the lifelong journey that we talk about is not just 80, 90 years or whatever, it's forever, isn't it? It's ongoing.
Yes.
And I think if you look at it like that, you're just on an ever-ending sort of adventure, and see what comes next. So I don't think. It was my birthday yesterday. I was 67, and I don't feel it. And I don't sort of have a mindset of getting older. I just take each day as it comes. I'm just here today. I was here yesterday, and hopefully I'll be here tomorrow. I just carry on as normal, and that's the way to do it. Once you start to sort of quantify things in time frames and all that sort of thing, it's very restricting, and it's not a good thing. So I just take each day as it comes.
Well, Janet, happy birthday from all of us, your friends here at We Don't Die Radio and listeners. Happy birthday.
Yeah, well, that's my advice anyway. Just take each day as it comes, trust what comes along, and go with your intuition, because looking back, I think that is one of the best ways to go. Rather than try and map things out for yourself, you can spoil things for yourself by making too many plans.
Yes. I'd like to talk a little bit about the website you just created. It's brand new, a couple of posts on there, but one of them, I think one of the posts you made really ties into what we were just talking about. The website is thespiritualme.com, brand new, like I said, but you have a beautiful article that you write about. I have it right here, but just who we are and how our cells regenerate. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't often think, but we become brand new human beings every.
We're always regenerating, and I think our physical selves actually tie in with our spiritual selves, because when you get down to the cellular level, like I've heard you say before, if you put a microscope on to your physical body, and you look at it through a very strong microscope, you'll eventually come to nothing.
Yes.
There will be nothing there. And the cells are the smallest living entities in our body, and they in themselves are entities, and they're sort of filtering and sending messages all the time and keeping our bodies going. And so once you get past that, you get into the nothingness of life, and these things are regenerating and renewing themselves all the time. And I said in the article, every part of our body renews itself within a matter of weeks, and every so many years we have a completely new body. So to me, there's a connection there. There's a connection, a spiritual connection, because once you get past that physical thing, you go into the spiritual side, and one thing will have an effect on the other. And it's the way I want to that's what I want to pursue, that sort of connection.
I'd like to read just this paragraph that you have.
Yes.
You write, your body is changing and renewing itself by the minute. It's hard to believe, but your skin completely renews itself every 35 days. You get a new liver every 6 weeks and a completely new brain every 2 months. The cells in our stomach, which are responsible for digesting food, are renewed every 5 minutes, and your entire skeletal structure is renewed every 3 months. Your whole body will be completely renewed and replaced every 5 to 7 years. The fact is, the actual physical body is not the same one you had some weeks ago, but the little me who lives inside it remains a constant.
Absolutely, yes. So we are the same. Whatever happens with the body around us, we are the same, and we will be the same when that old body dies and gets burned or buried or whatever. We'll still be the me.
I love it. Okay. And it makes sense.
Of course it does. Yes, it makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense. So,
Wow,
yeah,
great.
yeah. Yeah, it's a pity it doesn't renew itself as back to 25, isn't it?
I know, but I've interviewed enough people that say when we reach the hereafter, the spirit world, we can be any age we want. So I
Yes,
like that.
because we're using our minds. We're using our thoughts to create, which is probably what we do now. But we're in a much denser situation,
Hmm.
and it takes longer. We're in a heavy, dense sort of life and existence, and our intentions probably do come to fruition, but it takes so long because we have to go through such heavy stuff to get there. However, when we're no longer here and we're just energy, we could probably manifest whatever we want whenever we want.
There's a book that one of our guests told me about called The Intention Experiment
Yeah,
by Lynne Mctaggart, and it is just that. Our thoughts and what we intend and what actually can be created in real time and space. And so I do believe that this is a denser atmosphere, like you say, but
yes,
we still are those souls, whether we're the little me's, as you call it, whether we're here on earth or in the spirit world, I
yeah,
think.
we are. And I mean, I don't think it does too good to speculate too much because there's a lot we don't know.
Hmm.
We're talking now about stuff that we feel we know, stuff that makes sense, and stuff that's become apparent to us because of our journey and our investigations. But there's an awful lot that we still don't know, and we may well find out in the near future, and we may not. Or it may take years before that information comes out. But so it doesn't do too well to be absolutely certain about stuff because we can never be certain about anything really. It's changing all the time.
Definitely. Even just to see how our own technology's changed. A
Oh
hundred
yeah,
years ago, no one could imagine the cell phones that we use now.
absolutely, yeah, and Skyping and
Yeah.
who would have believed I would be speaking to you from the UK in the USA? It would have been like witchcraft 200 years ago.
That's
It
right.
a suggestion of it, but everything was there. It just had to be discovered, and there's a whole lot of other stuff that has to be discovered, and that we no doubt will do. Whether it's in our lifetimes, I don't know.
Well, I think we'll still be a part of it from the spirit world, you and I.
Well, of course, yeah, we'll be at the Banyan.
we we will,
We'll be for the seances.
or more centers like that. I
Yeah,
think I enjoy doing these shows personally because I get excited for my own life, but that's what I wish to share with anybody listening is getting excited whether you may not have any interest in physical mediumship or any of this, but there might be something you're interested about near-death experiences or reincarnation or mediumship or whatever that may be. But to light, well,
and
it's not
it
even,
all ties in.
yeah, light the
It all
passion
ties in
and
together.
have we're each on our own individual journey. We're all different, but there is a spark within each one of us, I think, that we want to learn, we want to grow, we're interested in.
Yes, and I think that we all have to be curious about what's going to happen to us. We none of us are going to live forever. We
Right.
know the end is going to come. We've seen it happen to our nearest and dearest. We've
Yes.
seen them go through it, and we know it's going to happen to us one day. And I think I wouldn't like to approach that time in a state of fear. I would rather approach that time in a state of anticipation and excitement, looking forward to the next big adventure.
I love that word adventure. Just like one door opens to a new room, and
Yeah,
that's
I'm
all it
sure.
is. Wow.
Yeah,
Janet,
sure.
do you think meditation is important for quieting the mind?
Yes, I do. It's not easy, but then again, I think people have a lot of preconceptions about meditation, like you're supposed to do in a certain way, and I think that just when I remember being at school and daydreaming through the window. That's meditation. it's just quieting the mind or just getting lost in your thoughts, and that's meditation, because you kind of you're taking away your attention from everything else that's going on and allowing your own spiritual connection to come through. And it's a great time, I think, for asking questions or to solve problems. I know that when you detach yourself from a problem, very often the solution comes. That's happened to me, a number of times before, where I've had a very big problem to solve and not been able to see the way forward in any way, shape or form. And I've got to the point where I've given up and just gone into a state of meditation and, just throwing it out to the universe sort of thing. And lo and behold, the next day or within a very short time, the answer has appeared. The solution has come along. So I think just giving yourself that space away from things gives life a chance to unfold for you. Whereas if you're always harping on at it and thinking about it and turning it over in your head, you're just keeping it there in front of you all the time. So meditation is great for that. It's great for relaxation, for solving your problems, and just taking yourself out into another space. Yeah, it's great. And I don't think there are any rules to it either. It's just being in a quiet place.
I remember as a kid we had these Chinese finger traps that you put your fingers into each one. It was just like a little tube, and the more you pulled, the more this tube would just stick on your fingers and you couldn't get out. And the only way to get out was to relax.
Yeah.
And then you could pull your fingers out. So I think the same thing holds true with meditation and quieting the mind. I want to ask you, you are a mother, yes?
Yes.
And I don't know how many children you have. I never even asked you that when we met.
2 boys. Yeah. 2 grown-up boys.
2 grown-up boys. And one of them is a medium, correct?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
This is
the one who will be coming to the Banyan with me.
Yeah, and obviously this isn't a show about him, but did you notice in him at a young age that he was able to connect with the spirit world, or how did that come about that he chose to be a medium? Because that's pretty great.
Yeah, he was very fascinated. I had one set of tarot cards in the house, which were just on the shelf, and a book about tarot reading. And they were just there, and he became very fascinated with it, and he read it. It was almost like a duck to water sort of thing. He kind of went to it very naturally. And he read all sorts of things and got some more tarot cards, and it kind of built up from there. And when he was 16, he started going to the local spiritualist church and sitting in the circles there. And he went to the spiritualist church for quite a long time. I mean, he still will go occasionally when he has the time to do it. And then somebody rang him up and said, I believe you're very good at reading tarot cards. I've got a shop. Would you come and help me out in the shop? I need a reader. So he went to do that. And then he's gone on from there. He's done all sorts of workshops, and he appears at a lot of the mind, body and spirit events that we have in the UK throughout the summer. And more recently, he's been doing workshops with Gordon Smith in London. But he's sort of going towards more the trance mediumship. That's where his interests tend to lie at the moment, but it's taken him quite a few years to get to that point. He does a psychic TV show. He does work on a psychic TV show sometimes, but he's sort of getting into the more serious side of it, and hopefully that he can get some more development on that, because it's one of those things that your development just takes the length of time that it needs to for you. You can't force it, can you? It's just, you've just got to go with it and learn as you go along. So that's what he's doing.
That's so great. And I can't help but think you raising him with the beliefs that you had, he could be a curious kid. I think,
Yeah.
I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but I was not raised in a house that was open to this kind of conversation. So it's great that you're that kind of mom.
Very open and would discuss anything like that. They didn't sort of talk about it all the time, but they were very open. And I always think that it's important to let people go the way they lean. It's no good you wanting your children to be one thing or another. We've all got ideas that how we'd like our children to turn out, but everyone will turn out the way they need to themselves, and you have to go with that and encourage their strengths. So that's what I've done. Whether it was the right thing or not, I don't know, but
it's the perfect thing.
Yes, yeah.
And you used a great word earlier, unfoldment, and I think of a little bud on a flower, or for a flower that hasn't yet developed. And I think of unfoldment because I'm the type of person that I'd love results tomorrow, to actually wait for the bud to grow and nurture it and water it, maybe put some fertilizer and take the time, and then finally it opens. It's interesting but the word unfoldment just reminds me of a flower, that you cannot force a flower to open. And we're all on our own journeys of unfoldment, aren't we?
Yeah, and we're all taking different lengths of time. And that's why, you see people saying that, they've done things for so many years, and it is a journey. And you hear people saying, I heard Nick at the Banyan say he wanted to do healing when he was quite young, and Spirit said, no, you need to go and get yourself a job and a life and experience other things. And when you're ready, you can come back and do it. And that's exactly what's happened. And maybe he didn't like that idea at the time, but looking back, you can see, the benefits of having done it. And now he's got this great place, and he's doing his healing workshops as he intended to. But he's had to wait until he was ready. And how do we know when we're ready? We probably don't know, but they'll let you know when the time is right and when you're personally ready to move forward and do your thing.
And we all don't have big things to do. I have a day job with a catering business. You want to share what your day job is?
I work in Manchester Airport.
You work in the airport. And so we don't have to all become mediums and those things. We can maintain what's paying the bills and tap into our spiritual nature.
Yes, well, that's it. I mean, it's not something that people make a lot of money out of anyway. No. And it's not really that ethical to do that. It's a natural thing that you really have to have an interest, and you really have to just trust and follow. And, not everyone can do that, because there are a lot of preconceptions and teachings of other persuasions that take you away from that way of thinking. So we are kind of impeded a little bit along the way with our educations and upbringings and stuff. So I can understand why there are lots and lots of people who are a bit afraid of it, or they don't like it, or they can't understand what it's all about. And hopefully things will open up a little bit more, that those people might have a bit more understanding and acceptance of it in the future. I would like to think so anyway.
I think so, because I was one of those people.
Yeah. Well, I've never doubted it. That's one thing. I think all my life I've never doubted it. I don't know whether it's because I was an only child. I have a number of friends who were only children. Sometimes we all get together and we all understand things about ourselves because we were only children. And I think only children do tend to sort of go into their imagination probably a little bit more, because they spend a lot of time by themselves. And I don't know if that's had an influence on it for me. I was always very good at going into myself and happy with my own company and my imagination. So it could be, that could be an element to do with it.
Sure. Janet, many of our audience members are people who have experienced the death of a loved one and are experiencing grief right now. Do you have any thoughts that grief could be, or the pain that we experience could be, the catalyst that can help us get interested in our spiritual nature?
Yes, I think that is the catalyst for probably most people, that especially if they haven't had anything to do with it before. It's just that wondering where the loved one has gone, and if there is a chance that they can contact them somehow, or just to know that they're okay. And I think that when that does happen, it's very comforting for people to know that they've had a connection with their loved one. It could be through a medium, or something like that. I think it is very comforting to know that they are still around somewhere, and I'm sure they are. I mean, I feel them around all the time. I've got to the point myself where I seem to have more people on the other side than I have on this side.
Oh.
Just recently I've lost a number of very good friends, suddenly. And it's made a big hole in my life, friends who have been there for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And, they've just died suddenly. And suddenly, for me, they're not there. And it's nice to think that they are around somewhere. I always send them a guardian angel. When they pass, I always say, send them a guardian angel and say that Janet sent you. And they'll know that it's okay to go with you,
Nice.
Because I think as we get older, it probably gets to that stage where more of your nearest and dearest and best friends are on the other side than they are in this side with you, if you're still alive, if you're the last one, and I think it's a great comfort for people to know, but not everybody thinks on those lines, and there's nothing we can do about that, really.
No. What else shall I ask you, my friend?
Well, you have all the questions, Sandra.
That interesting. I'm just enjoying like we're having a cup of tea together. What are you most passionate about now in the world of afterlife or metaphysical?
I think that the one thing that I'm most passionate about, I think that as I'm getting older, when you're young, you don't think too much about it, because if you're only very young, you've only got next week and next year to worry about. And you're certainly not thinking about what's going to happen when you get much older. When you start to get through your 60s and you're looking toward, you see people getting much older, it becomes more interesting to you, and you start to wonder how things are going to go. And so I think that my passion at the moment is to understand how people can live here healthier and look after themselves while they're in this life, and actually start to appreciate the spiritual side, that there is no end to it. We're just going to pass over and carry on another life elsewhere. And I want people to understand that, so that they can have a good end of their lifetimes, a good old age, and in a healthy situation. So health for older people, I think, not to end up on heaps of drugs, and just to sort of live out your days with a view to another adventure on the way the other side. It's not going to make it easier for the people that you leave behind, but for you, it's going to be a new venture. So I think that's where I'm looking at the moment, to pursue that side of life.
And I think that's so important, to not just have length of years, but the quality of the years we have.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you're right, we might not have all the answers, and we're still discovering what it's all about, but I think we're on planet Earth and we're given these lives for a reason. So make the most out of our adventure.
Absolutely.
And make it an adventure.
All day, and do the things that you enjoy doing, not things to please other people. if you like doing something, well, you must do it. And because when you're happy, you feel you're healthy. And unhappiness and stress brings on bad health for people. So, you've got to do the things that make you happy in life.
Beautiful words, my friend. Well, Janet, thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I feel absolutely honoured included in all the illustrious people that you've interviewed, that you've had me as well.
You are illustrious. And as a note to our listener, Janet's new website that she's working on, where you can read 2 great articles right now, thespiritualme.com. And if anyone's interested in meeting Janet and myself at Banyan Retreat, you can go to banyanretreat.com. Twice a year, they offer a 5-day workshop retreat. In the spring, it's called Whispers from the Soul, and in the fall, it's Voices from the Past, as well as they have a whole host of other courses you can take. So it's a great place. And I'm currently talking with Scott and our friends Nick and Stephen to create some online things, because like you say, not everyone can get there, but I can't help but think that it is a new age upon us, that more and more people will be excited about some of the things we've witnessed, and we can create them in other parts of the world.
Yes, well, that is the thing now. We have to sort of try to pioneer new groups in other parts of the world and give them our support.
Yes.
Because people don't always know how to go about doing these things, so they do need support. Everyone needs support in putting together a circle or getting people of like-minded people together. So I think that is something that certainly you can do with your program, and we can all sort of have a little input in that in that direction.
Yes. Well, and I want to say to our listener too, what's happening in the circle that I'm with, not like an active circle, like a mediumship circle, but I'm thankful that I've met so many people that share the same vision and are like-minded, in all of our guests, and working with the folks from the AREI, the Afterlife Research and Education Institute. There is, if you go to afterlifesymposium.org, that's the upcoming symposium in Scottsdale, Arizona in September. So even if you can't make that, I always encourage people to go to the site and see some of the speakers and some of the things that are happening. I mean, cutting edge science and mediums, and there's really great things. But also there's some online groups starting, and I think it's Afterlife. Oh gosh, I can't even remember. I'll put it in the body of this, but the Afterlife Research and Education Institute has a discussion group on Facebook that you can belong to, and there's these weekly Zoom meetings that you don't even have to fly anywhere, that you can participate and be in a live free conference with so many people on so many topics on the afterlife. Really, really great. And if you can go to victorzamet.com/Zoom, and that'll show you some of the conferences that we're having online. So again, I'll put the link to the Facebook group in the description of this episode. So in closing, Janet, thank you. Another big thank you to Janet Nix, our guest today.
Thank you, Sandra. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll look forward to meeting you in a few weeks' time.
That's it. Just a few weeks. I'm so excited to make the trip again. Oh, it's so much fun. And to our listener, thank you for taking the time to listen. I want to remind you, or tell you, if you don't know already, our home base is WeDon'tDieRadio.com, and all 240 episodes of this show are available for you to listen to there. Also, there'll be something that pops up on the screen that says Join Sandra's Insiders Club. And I do ask for your name, first name, and email address. And I'd like to keep track of how many people are listening. So that's my little method there. But also, in exchange, I give you a copy of an audio that I have. It's very healing, called How to Survive Grief, because we do know grief is the most painful thing to mankind. Also, I have a PDF called My 19 Reasons to Believe in the Afterlife, and it says you get to read several chapters of my book, We Don't Die, and in confidence here, it's the whole book. I really don't, I want you to have everything I know. And so that's all at WeDon'tDieRadio.com. So lastly, in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I'm so happy I get to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. And I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that your life here on earth is important. So in the words of Janet, just remember, your life is unfolding. You're in the perfect place, the perfect time. Your life is a never-ending adventure. So I really want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.